Did you know that from 1956 to 1971, the FBI ran a secret program designed to foment conflict within revolutionary movements, as well as broader movements for reform? Conflicts which not only crippled these movements, but served as a cover to frame and even outright murder revolutionary fighters and activists. Did you know that they sent undercover people into these movements specifically to create or magnify conflicts? They spread unsubstantiated gossip, rumors, and often inventions. They forged documents and planted false stories in the press. And those the FBI identified as leaders were marked for neutralization, a euphemism for being framed on serious criminal charges or killed. All this came to light in 1971 when some heroic people snuck into an FBI office at night and appropriated the files on this counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO for short.
Last March, someone broke into the FBI offices in Media, Pennsylvania, stole some records, and mailed copies of them around to several newspapers.
Those records would help bring an end to J. Edgar Hoover's secret activities within the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
He ordered his agents not only to expose New Left groups, but to take action against them to neutralize them.
As a result, many people in the movements of the time, and even beyond in the broader society, adopted standards for settling differences over politics and ideology in a principled way to prevent the police, FBI, and other government agencies from spreading slanders, creating divisions, and endangering the lives of people active in the struggle for justice. Now, decades later, younger generations are way too unaware of this history, and in too many cases are doing the work of COINTELPRO, whether they're conscious of it or not. We see this in the vicious and very dangerous attacks that have been launched recently against Rise Up for Abortion Rights, the Revcoms, Bob Avakian, and Sunsara Taylor, by some activists in the movement spreading blatant lies and slander. A disinformation campaign no better than Trump's big lie. People who did little to nothing to stop the fascist attacks on abortion rights, trying to keep people away from and tear down the one group, Rise Up for Abortion Rights, that called for mass resistance to this. People who've never read anything substantial from Bob Avakian, never even thought about the crucial questions of revolutionary strategy and theory that are key to getting free from this capitalist imperialist nightmare, slandering the person who has answers to these questions as some kind of scary communist cult leader. Bullshit accusations of transphobia, which are easily refuted by looking at the Rise Up for Abortion Rights and Revcom websites, and completely made up charges of financial fraud, inviting the state in to investigate. This is extremely dangerous. What's even worse is how many people uncritically regurgitate these lies, spreading this garbage on social media. All this gets picked up and further amplified by journalists with no journalistic integrity and standards, and used by operatives of the Democratic Party as well as Republican fascist forces. And it becomes the sewer in which the police and intelligence agents can swim and do their dirty work of trying to suppress dissent and snuff out revolutionaries. To give you a sense of the real-world consequences of this, I'm going to share some examples of what happened as a result of COINTELPRO. The point is to learn from this history, not repeat it. One of the earliest and ugliest FBI operations was against Malcolm X. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover was fixated on preventing the rise of a black messiah and clearly viewed Malcolm X as such a threat. One of the COINTELPRO tactics was to manufacture or fuel disputes between black movement organizations and individuals. In 1964, Malcolm left the Nation of Islam, the NOI, over important political differences. He was beginning to reject the mysticism and conservatism of the NOI and become more broad-minded and revolutionary-minded.
And in my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, brown, whatever else there is, you're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution, a time when there's got to be a change. People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built, and the only way it's going to be built is with extreme methods. And I, for one, will join in with anyone, don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Thank you.
NOI leaders responded not by debating the political differences with Malcolm, but by stirring up personal animosity, launching unprincipled attacks and veiled threats against Malcolm. For example, Louis Farrakhan said that Malcolm was worthy of death. All this created an atmosphere in which the authorities could carry out their nefarious activities and manipulate others to do so for them. Soon after, Malcolm was assassinated. At least 9 FBI informants and several other pigs from the NYPD's Red Squad were in the ballroom where it happened. The FBI Chicago office openly bragged about promoting and making the clash between the NOI and Malcolm worse. In November 2021, the 2 men who had been convicted for the murder of Malcolm X were found innocent and exonerated after decades in prison, but the hand of the system remains covered up. A major objective and focus of COINTELPRO was isolating and setting up the most revolutionary forces at the time for attack, especially the Black Panther Party, the BPP. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover declared the Panthers the greatest threat to the internal security of the country and wrote to FBI offices calling for imaginative and hard-hitting counterintelligence measures aimed at crippling the BPP.
FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover today asserted that the Black Panthers represent the greatest internal threat to the nation.
As they did with Malcolm X, the FBI often focused on setting up others to do the actual dirty work. To take one notorious example, the FBI forged a letter, supposedly from someone in the community, to Jeff Fort, the leader of the Blackstone Rangers, a Chicago gang at the time, claiming that the BPP was getting ready to move on him. Fort was suspicious and decided the threatening letter was not credible. But this letter was part of a larger COINTELPRO operation that set in motion events that led to the assassination of Panther leader Fred Hampton by Chicago police and the FBI in 1969.
We always say the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that.
And yes, the FBI came after Bob Avakian, who by the late 1960s was emerging as a revolutionary leader.
And let me say one thing to the white people in the audience. Now, you know, Bobby has been saying for a long time, we will not fight racism with racism. We refuse to stoop to the level of a racist to hate somebody because of the color of his skin. Well, that's fine. But I see a lot of white people walking around and say, oh, good. Now the Black Panther Party don't hate me. I can go on about my business. That's a cop-out. And if you act like that, the Black Panther Party will hate you. Not because you're white, but because you ain't taking care of business to organize other people. Teach them the need to support the Black Liberation Movement led by the Black Panther Party as a strong, fearless voice against American imperialism, and to link up with all the people in Vietnam, in China, in Angola, in Latin America, and everywhere else who are standing shoulder to shoulder to drive this vicious beast out of the way and out of the pages of history.
In June 1971, FBI Director L. Patrick Gray noted to subordinates that this is the kind of extremists I want to go after hard and with innovation. In his memoir, From Ike to Mao and Beyond, Bob Avakian talks about how he was approached by the head of the Berkeley Police Red Squad and told that he and the Revolutionary Union, which BA played a central role in founding, were under surveillance. A Freedom of Information Act discovery revealed that the House of Representatives did a whole report and investigation on the Revolutionary Union. Another Freedom of Information Act inquiry also showed that BA was under surveillance in Maywood, a suburb of Chicago, and that the FBI had made a diagram of the inside of his house, indicating through which windows someone could see different things going on inside the house. This was similar to the diagram of Fred Hampton's house that enabled the FBI and the Chicago cops to assassinate him. The 1960s and early 70s was a time when people who wanted a better world were discussing big questions: reform or revolution, Marxism, anarchism, or some other framework. What's required for Black liberation and women's liberation? And what's the relation of that to the struggle to end all forms of exploitation and oppression? What methods and criteria for leadership should be used? How can revolution actually be made in this country up against the forces of repression? There were big debates, as there should be, about these important questions and sharp political differences. The pattern and practice of COINTELPRO was to exploit these differences, to twist them into vicious, destructive, personal attacks, with the aim of disintegrating the movements for social change, isolating and setting up the most radical and revolutionary forces and leaders for neutralization. The urgent question for today is this: don't fall for and don't tolerate the kinds of behavior that mimic what the FBI has used to destroy social movements and take out revolutionary leaders. Call it out. Fight for a culture where people unite against our common enemy and discuss and debate our disagreements, not gossip, rumors, and personal attacks. A culture where people are critical thinkers and look for the evidence rather than believing things just because it suits your objectives or comes from a source you like. A culture of broadness of mind and generosity of spirit, instead of sadistic Twitter trolls and building yourself up by tearing others down. There are big questions before us today, literally life and death questions, as capitalism pushes our planet over the cliff. World war looms, and the Republicans seek to impose their fascist agenda through the courts, the state houses, and the violent MAGA mobs, while the Democratic Party has no answers to this, except trying to maintain the norms of this oppressive system as the fascists tear up those norms. And it needs to be said that the normal workings of this system the Democrats uphold includes the merciless, vengeful repression and suppression of all who seriously oppose their system. So what road forward for humanity? Give in to the despair? Help a few people on the margins and keep relying on the Democrats, as these activists attacking Rise Up for abortion rights and the Revcoms insist? Or the road of resistance and revolution? There is a roadmap for this, and a new communism developed by Bob Avakian. If people got on this road, in this moment of deep crisis and divisions, we can change everything. That demands serious engagement. That is what the haters attacking us and the powers that be who take advantage of them are so afraid of. That is what we in the Revcoms will not back off of 1 inch. And we will not allow these counter-revolutionary assholes, or just fools, acting like the volunteer COINTELPRO brigade, to help this system target the foremost revolutionary leader of our time, like they did Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, and so many others. There's a road that's been paved in blood, with oceans of blood in the coming years if things stay on this course, with tremendous suffering and death for people here and all over the world under this system. And there is a road of struggle. Which road, which future, which side are you on?